Hello, everyone. So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different than alternate history scenarios or something like that. I do want to go ahead and say those are still going to be going on. We're just going to be doing something a little differently. And let's look at the 2024 presidential election and do a little bit of forecasting. Now, I first want to say, if you have not made a plan to vote and you're over the age of 18 and you're registered to vote, please make a plan now. Figure out how you're going to vote. If you live in a state that still is accepting mail-in ballots, please, if that's the way you want to go, please figure out how to do it and mail in your ballot. If you are in a state where you can vote early and that's how you want to do it, make a plan and go do it. Or if you want to go on election day and do it, that's fine too. I personally vote on election day. I wake up on that Tuesday morning and I head to the polls with my wife and we vote, and then we go get breakfast, and that's at like 8 o'clock in the morning. Secondly, I don't want to put any kind of bias on this at all. I'm not going to tell you who I'm voting for. I'm not going to tell you who I hope to win. I'm not going to tell you really anything that's hopefully going to change your opinion about who you're voting for. The purpose of this is just to analyze all the data I have in front of us. I'm going to kind of give you an idea about how I do this, and then hopefully you can figure out a way for yourself to determine, how, if you want to kind of do a little bit of this yourself. I have a background in this. I've been kind of taught and trained how to do this, but at the end of the day, it's not just data, it's instincts. It's knowing what you know and seeing what and using what you've seen before to make as accurate as you can be. So there you go. A little bit about my background. I have worked for political parties before. I'm talking about on a federal level, state level, and the local level. I've worked for campaigns, for state governors, for state representatives, for not, sending people to, the state capitol in the, in the house, the state house, as well as sending people to Washington. I've worked for presidential campaigns. I actually spent 6 months full-time paid to run a campaign headquarters and run the strategic operations for the entire southwestern portion of Georgia. So I've been doing this a while. I've been on the calls. I know what these sound like. I'm giving you guys just an idea how, again, that's my credentials. Take it or leave it, so that's why I feel like I can speak on this. Anyways, I've done a lot of stuff before this, basically looking at polls, looking at past elections to help me understand trends in counties so we can understand the difference in what happens with turnout and things like that. So we're going to talk about all of it. I'm going to try to keep this kind of short, so just bear with me. I know it's been 4 minutes and we haven't even looked at the first one, so I'm sorry. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a look here. So what you're seeing behind me is the 270 to win map. You guys can go to this website. It is 270-win.com and do this yourself. It basically takes the latest data for what they feel is solid Republican and Democratic states, and then applies the electoral votes to them. And from there, you can change it. You can change Wyoming if you wanted to, for fun. You can make this whole thing red or whole thing blue, whatever you want to do. But what we're going to do is we're going to leave all these the same because I've looked through a lot of them. I feel that 270 to win is pretty on the money so far with what I would say. So that's the good news. So we've got this pulled up. Let's take a look at our national polling. So this is the national poll. I mean, as you can see, Harris leads Trump by 2.5 percentage points. We are 3 weeks and 1 day away from the election, and it's close. This is within the margin of error. The margin of error is about 2.5 to 3%. And you can see here, 2.4%. That's really close, people. And here's the thing, though. This is the national poll. This means they feel that out of every American voting, the popular vote will be 2.4% in favor of Harris. Now, if you know anything about American politics and American presidential elections, the popular vote doesn't really mean anything. It's the electoral vote. You have to win the state and get those number of votes and get to 270 total. That's why this is called 270 to win. You got to get 270. I know it's weird for those who are not used to it. A lot of Americans don't like it. A lot of Americans love it. It just comes down to whatever you believe. So anyways, if the popular vote determined it right now, they say Kamala Harris would win. So, okay, we'll take that knowledge in a little bit here. But the popular vote to me is not that big a deal. It doesn't tell me anything about turnout. It doesn't really tell me anything at all. If 100 people got in a room, 48 would vote for Harris, 46 would vote for Trump, and the rest wouldn't know what to do. That's what that tells me. So not the biggest deal, but it does serve a little bit of a purpose. Now, let's take a quick look at favorability ratings. This is actually important for what we're doing, because the more favorable or unfavorable a candidate generally means kind of how the turnout's going to go, right? That makes sense. So we're looking here at Kamala Harris's favorability rating since about when she took office as VP. And as you can see, it started out, she was she was about 8% favorable. And then she kind of rode the wave until she became unfavorable in July of 2021. This is probably about the time that the inflation started hitting. People started becoming really dissatisfied in how the government was handling things. COVID was still kind of on the back, still there. People weren't going under lockdown so much, but they were, we did have new variants, just kind of reminding you all of some history as we go through here. She hits about 12% unfavorable by, a little after more than a year in. In here, I think this is really just the inflation, the economy hurting her, the border hurting her, things like that, because whatever hurts the president's, your president when you're the VP, it kind of hurts you too. And she's not really been very favorable. And then you see right here, I've fast forwarded to July 5th of this year, and you see she's about 16, 17. I think she even gets to about 18% unfavorable in this area. And if you look, this is right before she becomes the nominee. This is right where the media shifts. I've talked to people. This is not a biased opinion. This is something I've talked to both people on both sides about, and they have agreed that the media has shifted how they view and talk about Kamala Harris since she's taken over the nomination from Joe Biden. When she took over the nomination, the media went more positive for her. And when the media steers it one way, the people tend to think it's a good thing. It's herd mentality. So in this case right here, she was 53.8% unfavorable. More than 50% of the people thought she was did not have a good opinion of her. And then she takes the nomination, and look at it drop. Boop, boop, boop. I mean, it switched. The unfavorability is about, it comes down right about in here, and it starts switching in mid-September. And now she has a slightly more favorable opinion. I mean, it's only 0.1%, but still, she's viewed slightly more favorable than unfavorable. So the media has really helped Kamala change her image of who she is and who she, and what kind of person she is. And if you want to, if you doubt me, I'm going to show you something to back that up. Let's look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden at that same time, he started out favorable, 13.5% more favorable than unfavorable. He keeps rolling around about the same time. Remember what I said? It was about July, September. Kamala's numbers flipped. Well, here we are in September, and this is when Biden's numbers flipped. People, again, inflation, the border crisis, all these things, the economy not doing very well, COVID, all that stuff. And then his numbers keep going up, going up, going up. And here we are about the same time. He's 18% unfavorable right before he decides, I'm not going to run anymore. And once he steps out, his numbers barely drop. He goes down to he's at 13.6% now versus Kamala's 0.1%. Now, if you watch the news, how often do you hear Biden? How often do you hear about Harris? There you go. take it. Just again, it's just an objective, non-biased opinion, showing you guys just the data on it. Thought I would bring it up. Is it important for this? Absolutely. And I'll tell you why. Now, just so nobody says I didn't show Trump. Again, I'm not trying to show Trump in a favorable light here. I'm just showing, again, here's Trump's favorability since then. It's been pretty much in the gut, 53, 54% gutter area. He's always about 10 to 20% more unfavorable than favorable. And then lately, he has been coming a little bit down, but he's still about 10%. So not a whole lot of change. I think, right about here, you see him go from like 12% to like 8 and 9%. That's when he got shot. You get shot, you get a little bit of a boost. Kind of weird how that works, right? But still, it's what happened. You got to acknowledge it. He gets shot. He actually does, an assassination attempt. Kind of does, especially when you come up the way he did, it kind of makes people think the way they do. So anyways, there goes our favorability. And why is that important? You're probably asking. Turnout. Turnout is very important. If you have a well-liked candidate versus a candidate who is not well-liked, it could be the difference. I mean, it could be the difference between, an extra 150, 200, 300,000 people showing up in a particular state. That's a big deal. That flips states easily. If you have if you have two unfavorable people, well, then it's just a case of who turns out the most. If you have two favorable people, who turns out the most? If you have a favorable and an unfavorable, though, well, in that case, I mean, it could just, the turnout should be turnout for that other side that's favorable should be drastically different. That's what happened versus 2016 and 2020. 2016, Hillary Clinton was an unfavorable candidate. Trump was an unfavorable candidate, but Trump's side turned it out. Trump, he was a little bit more favorable than her, and he just so happened to turn out, all the Republicans came out to vote. And that's how Trump beat Hillary Clinton. In 2020, you had an unfavorable candidate in Trump, and you had a favorable candidate in Joe Biden. You can imagine how that went. You don't have to imagine, you saw it. we had an election, and Biden won, and Biden won pretty big. At least in my opinion. A lot of people, wouldn't agree, but he won pretty big. So anyways, there you go. So turnout's going to be big. If you're pro Kamala, you want a high turnout. If you're pro Trump, you want a low turnout. So there you go. I think personally, we're going to have a little bit low. We're going to have somewhere probably about in between the turnout that we had in 2020 to 2016. I think we're going to go down in turnout. It's just the name of the game, right? If I don't think I have that pulled up right now, but I think turnout was like in the upper 60s or so. So it was pretty high, at least for what I see. So anyways, okay. So we've already discussed that turnout is very important, right? Turnout will really decide these elections. But let's also, let's take a look at what turnout fuels, the actual votes. So I think we first need to take a look at these states that used to be swing states. They now no longer are. It's important to do so. And really, we can kind of get a little bit understanding for some piece of the political process with that. I want to go ahead and preface this all by saying, if I talk about a state that you're in and say, well, so-and-so is probably going to win, it doesn't mean don't show up to go vote. Please go vote. Please do that. There are other things, at the very least, there are other things on the ballot that you need to vote for. It doesn't matter if you're going to vote down the ticket one way or the other. You need to get, there's things on that ballot that you need to fill out. Could be your local races. It could be provisions and questions that they have to help understand how to better, govern. Please go vote. Don't take this as a don't go vote thing. Anyways, so let's take a look. Ohio. If you've been paying attention to politics any longer than, 8 years, Ohio used to be a very important state. If Ohio went, blue, the whole election was probably blue. If it went red, the whole election is probably red. Well, if you look here, 270 to win has Ohio solidly red. Now, if or at least likely red. And if you're wondering, well, why is that? Why is it solidly red? Well, that's because polling suggests, as well as, some other data that we have, that more people are moving from, states like New York, Illinois, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. They're moving to places like Ohio, or, California to Texas, or to Colorado, to these other states. And if you're wondering, well, same with states like Florida. Well, they're moving there. We know that because we did a census in 2020 that helped us understand how many people live in our country. But it also helps us understand where they moved from. And we kind of get a little bit better of an idea, like, if you are a likely Republican voter from New York and you move to Florida, well, that makes New York a little less Republican and Florida a little more Republican. And we can figure that out. We have a good idea about understanding where they go, so it's pretty neat to understand that. We can also look at trend data. That's another big one. And we put it all together, and we come up with, basically knowing a little bit more about what a certain way, where a state may lean or where it may go. So we look here at Ohio. Ohio used to be that swing state, right? Well, let's go look at Ohio's polling. 7.7% in favor of Trump as it stands. So, we take a look. Looks like they've got it right now. Now, that's not, right now the margin of error, that's safely outside of it. But is it likely to change? Probably not, but it could. So anyways, right now, Ohio, not really a swing state anymore. Let's look at another one. New Hampshire. Yeah, New Hampshire up here. They always say it could go one way or the other. For the most part, though, New Hampshire's usually blue. Take a look at New Hampshire's polling. 6.7% in favor of Harris. So there you go. Right now, I'd say that New Hampshire probably going to go blue. Let's take a look at, say, Texas. I think it's the Democratic dream to change Texas blue, to flip it blue. I think that's going to happen. I'm going to tell you right now, regardless of what you believe, as it stands, I think that's going to happen. The demographics are coming around to it. But right now, if we take a look at this year, in Texas, Trump's 6.6% ahead, well outside the margin of error. And I don't think Texas is going to flip anytime soon. Let's take a look at Florida. Now, Florida was a big deal in 2020. It was a couple thousand votes, really separated in favor of Bush. I mean, it had to go to the courts, a lot of things. Definitely look up how weird and convoluted 2020's election was in the state of Florida. But we see here, Florida and its 30 electoral votes are 5% in favor of going to Trump. So still, Trump with the margin of error there, still likely to win it. And that's why you see it in red. So I think we'll look at one more. We'll look at Minnesota. It's flipped a time or two before. Minnesota here is in blue. We look here, and Harris has a 5.8% lead in Minnesota. I think when you have, the governor as your running mate, he's a pretty well-liked governor. I think you're going to win that state. So this time around, Minnesota's not really a factor, I don't think. We'll see how things go in the next election. If the governor is not, there's no candidate from that state. So just to kind of get, it's kind of a weird year for Minnesota to understand it. I think it would have gone blue regardless, though. So yeah. Anyways, so our new states that are swing states or could decide this whole thing are in the sandy beige color here. So I've kind of randomized these. They're not in any kind of order. We're just going to kind of hit them. Now I will state 3 of them will come last because I wanted them last because there's extra things to talk about. But let's just go ahead and hit them. So the very first one is Arizona, and it's 11 points. Let's take a look at it. Arizona is currently 1.8% in favor of Trump. This is within the margin of error, by about 0.7%. It could be Harris leading it by almost a full percentage point. It could be Trump, 4% ahead. We don't know. But what we do know is it's close. And here's the thing. Arizona has flip-flopped before. It used to be solidly red. It went blue in the last election. What's it going to do? In my opinion, I think it's going to go red. I think border policies are going to have a real effect in Arizona. I think the economy is going to have a really big effect in Arizona. So based off of those two questions, I think that Arizona is going to be leaning red, and I think that Trump will take Arizona, giving him those 11 votes. So let's see what's next. We want to kind of move on a little quickly here. Let's go to Michigan. Michigan is up here. Kind of this looks like a mitten, people say, and it's got this little upper peninsula area. It's worth 15 votes, and it's kind of in the Rust Belt. So let's take a look at Michigan. Currently 0.7% for Harris. You can see it's gotten really close lately. Both campaigns are really working hard in Michigan and the Rust Belt, trying to get people's votes. It's 0.8% in favor of Harris right now. Michigan flip-flopped in 2016, then it went back in 2020. I think it's going to be a turnout game in Michigan, but I think the turnout will come in favor of Kamala Harris. I think she's going to win it. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one over to Kamala with those 15 votes. Now, let's go on. We're going to move on to Wisconsin. Wisconsin's got 10 votes. Let's take a look. Wisconsin's right next door, still in the Rust Belt, right there between Minnesota and Michigan. We're seeing right now 0.6% in favor of Kamala Harris. Again, it's getting close. These guys they're fighting it out. They're in the same TV markets and they're fighting it out between each other. Again, it's just going to be coming down to turnout. More people turns out it's probably going to go for Harris. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is going to go for Harris. I feel like that's correct. It's hard to sit here and say that, Wisconsin is, Michigan and Minnesota will go that way. Illinois will go that way, but Wisconsin won't. Wisconsin could flip. It's in my book. That night I'm going to be watching Wisconsin pretty closely, but I don't, again, it may not have any impact at all on this election. It's 10 votes. We'll see how it goes. Let's just remember 10 in our mind as we move on. Now, after Wisconsin, we're going to look at Nevada. Now, there's 6 votes here. Let's take a look at it. Nevada is 0.5%. That's super close. That's in favor of Harris right now. Nevada is a very weird state. It's mostly gone Democratic, but it's gotten really close recently. It has a lot to do with the fact that the population in Nevada is in the extreme south and the extreme northwest. Outside of that, there's not a lot of people in Nevada. So if you play your cards right, the Republicans could win it. Right now, it's hard to say it's going to flip. We're talking about something that's pretty much been in a blue state for a long time. So when it comes to Nevada, I'm going to go ahead and give them to Kamala. I think they've got that one done. Unless, just something kind of shifts out that way. I don't, it's going to come down to turnout, and they might, the Republicans might pick it up. But again, I don't feel like that's going to happen. Now, we're going to hit the last three states here: Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. So let's start with North Carolina. Now, North Carolina has 16 votes, and here we go with North Carolina, 0.9% in favor of Trump. That's barely under a percentage point, still within the margin of error. I mean, if you just gave it right now to Trump, that's 16 votes. But something we need to keep in mind about North Carolina is that this area right here around Asheville, North Carolina, you probably have heard that before. Asheville, North Carolina was devastated by Hurricane Helene. There are probably 1,000 people that they still have not found yet as of the time I'm recording this. Those are people that are more than likely not alive anymore. This area of North Carolina is very Republican. You have 2 cities in this area, like, Asheville and another one up near the border, that are blue, and the rest of that area is hard right Republican. excuse me, they're hard red Republican, not hard right. But regardless, they're hard Republican voters. If they can't get to the polls, if they can't get out there, how does the rest of the state work, right? Because there's Charlotte, there's Raleigh, Durham. There's a pretty big triangle here of blue counties. So that's a lot of blue voters. This area could help one way or the other. So it's going to come down to how much relief, the area impacted by, the flooding can get, and if those people can be getting to the voting booth. If more of them get there, I think we still see this one go red. And for the sake of the argument right now, we're 3 weeks away. I'm going to say it's going to go red. I'll really take a look at this the closer we get and see how bad that area is and see if maybe, anything changes. But right now, I think it's going to go red. We're going to act like Helene isn't going to impact it that much. All right, let's move on. We're going to my state. Yes, I live in Georgia, and Georgia has been solidly Republican since about I think the late 90s, early 2000s. And they went blue. In 2020, they shocked everybody, and we went blue by about 11,000 votes. It was close. It was a turnout game. Metro Atlanta showed up to vote. People in Savannah, out here, next to South Carolina, in Augusta, in Columbus, in Albany, these, more populous areas, they showed up to vote, and they showed up big, and it ended up erasing what would normally be several percentage points difference, and only, coming down to 11,000 votes. That was the difference. Now, is that going to happen this year? 0.9% in favor of Trump at this point. I don't think so. I don't think that it's going to happen this year. I think that the Republicans are going to retake Georgia. As far as me being here, I'm not working on any campaign this year, but I can tell you from what I see. And from what I see is I see a lot of Trump Vance stickers. I see a lot of signs. And I'm in a very populated area. I don't live in the middle of nowhere. I live in a pretty good sized city, and I don't see much. I see a few, but it's probably 75% Trump, 25% Harris. Even though I know my area is going to go for Harris, I still have a feeling that Trump will win this one. So Trump's going to take Georgia, and that's going to bring us to one final state with 257 to 262. Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes. Here we are coming back down to 2016 all over again. Will they make a difference? So let's take a look at Pennsylvania. Right now, 0.7%. That is a difference. Imagine if 0.7% of the vote changed the whole election. That's how close we are. That's what makes this forecasting fun. You can look here and see they've kind of come close. We've seen some 0.4s, we've seen some almost evens here in the polling. But right now, and if I could pull it all the way a little bit more, 538, which is a site I use for my polling, doesn't like to always work really well. It says 0.8, but it's 0.7. You guys saw it. But there it is, 0.7 right there. Right now they're saying 0.7. Pennsylvania is going to be a turnout state. I've said it, turnout, so many times tonight. I hope you understand how important that is. Turnout is going to determine if more people in Philadelphia turn out, or Scranton, or Pittsburgh, or Erie, solid, pretty blue areas. If they turn out there, then Kamala Harris probably wins this election. Because if it happens there, it's probably happening everywhere, right? That's generally the trend. So if it's happening there, I have to say it's probably happening everywhere, and that's a higher turnout night. Pretty sure that Harris wins the whole thing. If less people turn out, maybe you get a higher turnout in the more rural areas, which, you know, again, you're not getting a lot more votes there, or maybe you could flip a few people. I just don't see the flip happening. But if if you do, Donald Trump could win. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the camp for Kamala Harris, and she's going to win this election. That's how I've got it right now. Now let's remember, I did make notes about Wisconsin and a little one about Nevada. So that's 10 and 16 votes, 276 to 262. If Wisconsin flips, boom, that's a Republican win. If Nevada flips, it's still a Democratic win. You know, it's going to take a little bit more. If Arizona flips, you know, if some of those other ones flip, but Arizona flips the other way, which we don't think is going to happen, but maybe it might. Again, that could happen. If something weird happens and more states flip, I mean, it could really impact things. So I think right now, though, I'm pretty comfortable with this map. This is how I'm going to roll with it. Next week, we're going to come back. We're going to look at how things are going. We're going to look at this map again, see if there's been any changes, and look at the polling and figure it out. So, guys, I've been going at it for a while, but I hope this has given you guys a little bit of insight. We talked about a lot more today. Next time, we're not going to probably go into these swing states and all that, so don't worry about that. Next time, we're probably just going to really hit up these states that are actually battleground states. Maybe look at some things that's happened in the elections. It happened on the campaigns since, and kind of just look at some stuff, and maybe we'll get a little bit better idea. I plan to do episode every Monday from now until the election, and then I want to do one episode after the election where we take a look at all these and say, well, were we right or were we wrong? I can tell you right now, we're not 100% right. I think there's some changes coming, but right now the data tells me this is a good guess. So anyways, guys, I invite you to go 270 to win, utilize it, play around with it, have fun. If you would if you'll like the video, subscribe to the video. This is the first time ever being on the channel. I make alternate history videos for the most part, and then comment down below what you guys think. If please keep it civil. This is politics. I know that's hard, but please keep it civil. I do go through there and I remove bad comments, so please don't make me have to do that. We can all be civil towards each other and have a good conversation. Okay? So anyways, guys, I appreciate it, and I'll see you all next time.